Good morning on this Sunday, August 29th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. It's official. Herschel Walker makes a play for the U.S. Senate. Also, Delta Airlines tells employees if you don't get the COVID vaccine, expect to pay up. And the city of Atlanta wants to hire its first ever director of violence reduction. Phil, Theron, and Martha are all here. Bobby Capel is filling in for Kathy. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Herschel Walker has thrown his hat, or should I say helmet, into the ring as a Republican for the U.S. Senate. In his first campaign video, he introduced himself as a conservative, highlighting his small-town roots and distaste for partisan politics.
Politicians pick American against American, rich versus poor, black versus white, urban versus rural. I don't believe in that garbage.
UGA football icon Herschel Walker introduced himself to Georgia voters with this video that highlights his hometown of Wrightsville, Georgia, and his performance on the field.
The 1982 Heisman Memorial Trophy, Herschel Walker.
His name ID no doubt makes him the Republican frontrunner, but the first-time candidate will have to get through the GOP primary.
Herschel has always brought a lot when he's on the playing field, whether it's in football and now in politics. But we got a lot of great Republicans for the U.S. Senate that are running, including him now. And it's my hope that they're going to stay focused on things that I am, and that's posting up against the disastrous policies of the Biden administration.
Oh, we should also mention that Georgia Agriculture Commissioner Gary Black is also in the Republican race, along with Latham Sadler and Calvin King. All want to defeat incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock. So there's lots to talk about on this one. This was much anticipated. Phil, to you first.
Well, the entry of Herschel Walker, the great football legend, is a game changer for the GOP primary coming up next May. And there's a lot of excitement, not just in the GOP primary base, but among a lot of moderates and independents. It's a refreshing new entry. He's saying all the right things. And I think he'll pull in a lot of votes that normally a Republican wouldn't pull in. And so I think two things can happen. I think that he can get into the runoff in the GOP primary, but he's got to be careful. He's a rookie. This is his first time coming into the political arena, and he's got to show that he's got a grasp of domestic and foreign policy issues. Will he make some stumbles? Yes, all rookies do. John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock made some stumbles, but obviously didn't hurt them. They became the incumbents.
Theron, let's discuss this because Herschel Walker is so popular among UGA football fans and a lot of Republicans, but this is a test in the political field. So your thoughts?
Well, first, Laura, I got to give credit to Phil. For weeks, he's been coming on this show saying Herschel's running, Herschel's running, Herschel's running. So I would be not fair if I didn't give him credit for calling this one. So congratulations, Phil. You got your guy. But I think now, Lori, also to Phil's point, we got to really see how Herschel Walker is going to be able to run as a candidate for the United States Senate. And therein lies, I think, some of the challenges. And now we want to be fair to him. You know, he's just announced he definitely will be able to raise a lot of money. He will have the support of former President Trump. But, you know, he's got some opponents that I think are going to really point some things out and remind Georgians about Herschel Walker. Not the football player, but just the guy who, just moved back to Georgia permanently. So I think ultimately it is a good rollout. His name recognition is high, but I do think we will be talking more and more about this Republican primary as time goes on.
Martha, already, there is mention in the press about Walker's past domestic violence accusations, his book where he reveals his struggles with mental illness. Will these issues impact his race? I think you really got to be careful, especially when dealing around the issue of mental illness, as a candidate attacking another candidate.
Well, we've been talking about mental illness as an issue we need to look at more closely. And you're right, they've got to be careful about how they approach it. But I do think that Herschel entering the race is going to be very interesting because it will bring a lot more attention to this race. And if he gets through the primary, gets to the runoff, Reverend Warnock basically went unscathed during the time of his election. He's got some baggage too, and a lot of it wasn't aired in a really public way. It might have been mentioned in articles, but he didn't have to defend it. It was all puppies and Christmas lights in the last election. So we'll have to see how it plays out, and whoever wins the primary is going to go up against Reverend Warnock.
We all remember those ads, the puppies and Christmas lights, they worked. Bobby, what is the strategy for Democrats here?
Well, I think, first of all, on Herschel Walker's entrance into this race, I think it's very important that I think he's got a great chance at winning the Republican primary. He obviously has incredibly high name ideas, high of name ideas anybody in the state of Georgia could have entering a race for the first time in politics. However, I think he has to be extremely careful about running too far to the right and being on Trump's hip. Remember, Trump lost the state of Georgia three times in 3 months. In November and then twice again with those Senate seats in January. And so if he's able to pull himself away from Trump and kind of more into the Jeff Duncan lane, that's the type of person that can win statewide in the state of Georgia. I think if he's going to go to the right and go sit on Trump's hip the entire time in order to win this primary, I think he's going to be in deep trouble when it comes to facing off with Senator Warnock. I also think it's interesting to point out that John Cornyn, who's in charge of recruiting the Republican candidates in the United States Senate, is not in favor of Herschel Walker running because some of the baggage that we had discussed, because he knows how toxic that can be at the end in a general election. So I think that is an important indicator to look at. But Republicans in Washington did not get the opportunity to draft in the person they wanted. This is Donald Trump's handpicked person, and we'll see how he fares once he's under the bright lights.
Phil, I know you want to respond to Bobby's comments, but also, you know, with Walker's name ID and popularity, what does this mean for the other Republicans in the race?
Well, your second question first can be answered by they have to struggle, because as we all admit, he's the most popular person that's now in the race, and he's immediately the front runner, and he does have the endorsement of the president. He'll be a star at Trump rallies throughout Georgia. And who cares what the Washington GOP establishment wanted or not, Bobby? You know, that's what elected Donald Trump president. He was against both the establishments of both parties. So is Herschel Walker. He'll work with anybody, as he said in his video. But I think that's the appeal of a Herschel Walker, that, you know, we're not going to be bossed by anybody up in D.C. This is Georgia, and he's going to support Georgia values, and he's got his platform out there, and it's a Georgia First platform.
Martha, let me ask you that. You know, Herschel Walker is Trump's pick. This will help him in a Republican primary, but what about the general election in Georgia?
Well, I think we don't want to ignore the fact that we've got three other candidates that have been doing the work for the last several months. We've got Kelvin King, who's gone on a 159 county tour. Latham Sadler, former Navy SEAL, has been a guy that knows what he's talking about what's happening in Afghanistan. And then Gary Black, who's won statewide. So I wouldn't count those guys out yet just because of name ID. But as far as facing Reverend Warnock, I mean, we'll just have to get through the primary first. I'm not going to say who would be best against him or not, because we don't know that yet. But if I were advising Herschel Walker, I would say find 3 or 4 issues you really care about, and then find the way to pivot towards those whenever you're asked a question.
All right, Theron, I'll let you have the last word on Herschel, but I also do want to talk about the lieutenant governor's race, because it is getting very interesting with a lot of candidates in now.
Yeah, I think a quick just note, and I think, you know, one of the things that the viewers like for us to do is just give them some historical facts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Martha and Phil, but I think this is the first time that the Georgia GOP has had 3 African Americans running for constitutional offices in Georgia. You got 2 black men running for the U.S. Senate, and you also have a black man, Vernon Jones, who's running for governor. So I think that that's something that's going to be very interesting as far as how race and the outreach to the African American community, how much of that would the Republicans commit to. But as far as lieutenant governor's race, yeah, that is one to watch. What'd you say, Martha? I'm sorry.
There'll be more to come. You're going to be surprised at more candidates that we'll be announcing.
Okay. Well, look at you knowing what's going on in the culture. I appreciate that, Martha, that breaking news. But no, I'll be real quick. I think lieutenant governor's race, I'm sure Phil or others may have a little bit more to say about that, but that's definitely going to be one to watch.
Phil, go ahead.
Well, it was a good week for State Senator Burt Jones of Jackson. He announced for lieutenant governor, setting up a GOP primary, and Butch Miller, the Senate pro tem, State Senator Butch Miller, is also running. Burt had a big rally in Flovilla, Georgia. I've never heard of Flovilla, but now it was put on the map this week. He said he had over 800 people from around the state. And he's got the backing of President Trump. And let's remember that President Trump is beloved. The polls show over 80% 80% of the Republican base wished he was president right now. And so you can't ignore the Trump endorsement, and you can't ignore the backlash against the Democrats and Joe Biden and that's forming in the state, whether the issue is crime or inflation. So the Republicans can, whatever they are, whatever stripe they are, they can ride that wave into the primary and general election next year.
And Bobby, I just got a few seconds, but we also have Democrats we need to mention in the lieutenant governor's race. We've got among them Derek Jackson, Eric Allen, and of course Brian Miller as well.
Yeah, that one is really up in the air, all three of them, and maybe there'll be more entrants to come are vying for that position. Everybody's waiting to see what Stacey Abrams is going to do, too, at the top of the ticket.
Yep, we all are waiting for that announcement. All right, thanks, everybody. Coming up, Governor Kemp calls up the National Guard to help hospitals overrun with COVID patients.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Oh, it's like deja vu. Hospitals across Georgia are filled with COVID patients, and this week Governor Kemp called on the National Guard to help handle the overflow. Theron, Governor Kemp said also this week that we may be close to reaching the peak of this latest wave in some parts of the state. We can only hope so.
Well, I think this was definitely the right thing for Governor Kemp to do. There were many people, Lori, who wanted him to do more. I think the public is definitely understanding that the governor has a very tough job, but I think we need his leadership and we need his constant updates. And so while we definitely need to make sure we protect our seniors and their families, particularly in nursing homes, I do think that there are folks that really want the governor to continue to update us on the data. While he is saying that he thinks we've hit the peak, I'm hearing from a lot of medical experts to say, Lori, that we need to be prepared for a very tough winter. And so while I know we are, things are sort of at a point where we feel like the numbers are definitely going up, and I have to trust the data, but I think we all need to make sure that county leaders and city leaders and the state of Georgia work together to really fight this deadly disease.
Martha, Delta Airlines making a bold move for its employees this week. You either get the vaccine or you pay a monthly fee of $200. Your thoughts?
Well, they've done this kind of thing before, not just Delta Airlines, but other companies related to smoking. If you're a smoker, you have to pay more. And insurance companies across the board do that. I have a tough time criticizing Delta for this because they are an independent company that can make their own decisions about what they want their employees to do. I think they went further to say if you were unvaccinated, you would have to get tested once a week. I think that was in this release that was put out, too. So bottom line is, while I think we need to do more work of talking about what doctors are doing across the country to keep their patients home and out of the hospital, because there hasn't been enough research done on that, and there are things that are working, I still think you can be pro-vaccine like I am, but also say we need to do more work on treatments.
Yeah, Bobby, what do you think about that? Because, Delta, they're not mandating the vaccine. They're giving you an option like other companies, but they are saying, you'll be punished if you don't get the vaccine.
I think it's completely and totally appropriate. This is a company whose bottom line relies on people packing their airplanes. It's a customer service business, and people want to feel comfortable and safe when they get aboard an airline to know that the people that are going to be taking care of them on that flight are vaccinated. And if they're not, then they are potentially exposing people to coronavirus, which can cause, obviously, have deadly consequences. And I think it's completely appropriate. And frankly, it bleeds beyond Delta Airlines. The fact that so many people have decided not to get vaccinated at this point has impacted every single one of us that has a child in school who is now forced to go and wear a mask in kindergarten, in first grade, in second grade. That is not the officials in Fulton County and across the board who have decided to take that step and say, hey, we're going to mask mandate these children. No, this is because the people are not getting vaccinated, and therefore these variants continue to spread, which is putting our children at risk. And the same goes for flying. I just have lost all patience with this entire argument of unvaccinated people. Back when polio happened, they required vaccinations for the whole country. It's very selfish.
Phil, weigh in here, because, I feel for the people who have to go to the hospital and for nothing COVID related, and you just have to drop off your loved one because you can't go in as a visitor.
Well, you're making a good point, and I would have to say, too, I checked in with Wellstar, and 91% of the patients in all the Wellstar hospitals in Georgia are unvaccinated. They're getting infected by the Delta variant COVID virus. So I think as a CEO myself, I can understand you're going to look at the arithmetic for your company, and you're going to have to see what's the bottom line is. It is a private company, as has been pointed out. I will say, though, the media doesn't concentrate on this. There are some exceptions, or you'll be sued out of the wazoo if you're a company. You can have a religious exemption, or you can have a medical exemption, and maybe get out of that $200 fine that Delta wants to do for their employees.
All right, we'll switch gears because voting rights groups are getting together to protest what they call any possible hostile takeover of Fulton County's elections. Theron, they point out the folks appointed to investigate problems are 3 white men in a county that is more than 60% non-white. Your thoughts?
Well, that's always sort of been the concern here, Lori, is that when this Senate Bill 202 was put in place, let's not forget it totally strips away the constitutional duties of the Secretary of State to administer any sort of investigation, any things that may be pointed out, any irregularities in the county. And so now you have the ability for state legislators, 2 in the Senate, 2 in the House, to come together and say, hey, we need to investigate. But then the people who are investigating this county doesn't actually resemble the county's population. And so therein lies, I think, the sort of diversity challenge to making sure that the people who you're making a determination for in that county is not reflected in the people who are investigating it. But also, it actually is a partisan move, too, because you have a Republican-controlled legislature that is actually going to make changes or make recommendations in a Democratic county. And so therein lies, I think, again, some of the challenges with the Senate Bill 202. And I think you'll hear more and more lawsuits and cases point out this fact.
Martha.
Look, we already have a model for this in place. When school systems were taken over, Dooley County, mostly African-American county, it was under a Republican governor, and now they are achieving great things. Clayton County, same kind of thing. Their board was taken over, and now they're achieving much better results. We have a model for this. This assumption that people are going to be unfair based on this situation where there are many steps to go is just not fair, and it's not backed up by facts. We have models of doing these kinds of things in Georgia and around the country, and usually it ends up with a better outcome.
All right, Bobby, you've got both hands up. Go ahead.
Well, the assumption is not an assumption because it actually is based on fact, Martha. Respectfully disagreeing with you here. The fact is, the same people who want to oversee the election in the state legislature are the same people who tried to overturn and topple a Democratic election in November. So it is absolutely in bounds to ask the question, how is it that we're going to trust them if they already tried this once, that they're not going to go do it again in the next election once they take over local control of the elections? I thought Republicans were all for local control. It's very odd all of a sudden that they want these big government takeovers.
Martha, final word here.
Oh, Bobby, there you go again. Your Democratic consulting credos are showing. The point I'm making is we have a history of doing this and it being successful, and on the other side, it working better, even with both parties involved.
All right, we'll leave it there, guys. Thank you. Coming up, Atlanta has a job opening for a first of its kind Director of Violence Reduction. Stay tuned.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
In an effort to address the crime issue, the city of Atlanta is looking for a Director of Violence Reduction. I'm not sure who came up with that job title, but that's beside the point. Bobby, this seems just like another layer of bureaucracy.
Something needs to be done. I'm not sure that this is necessarily the answer, but we have got to get the crime situation figured out in the city of Atlanta. There's no reason that it has to be the way it is right now. And we're going to have an election here in about 2 months, both at the top of the ticket and then down through city council. So they'll be setting the agenda going forward. But I think this is the number one issue in this election for a reason, because it has to be tackled.
Phil, to me, a Director of Violence Reduction equals the police chief. That's just my thought. But, you know, this week the city of Atlanta surpassed 100 murders for the year, a grim milestone. Will a Director of Violence Reduction really help in this matter?
Well, if Bobby's not sure about it, I sure am. It's a stupid idea. And you're right, Lori. The police chief is supposed to be the director of violence reduction. And I looked at the job description of this idiotic position that's being proposed by Mayor Bottoms. They're going to do research on where crime is the worst in the city of Atlanta. You know, you can do that right now on a day-to-day basis by looking at the data. I can look up what's going on in Beat 303 in Cabbagetown and tell you there's a gang war that's been dealing with. I mean, it's ridiculous. And Bottoms, I don't even think she has a team. I don't know who's advising her on this stuff, but it's a waste of $70 million to set up this bureaucracy. Give that to the police for bonuses or cameras.
Theron, over to you on this.
Thank you, Lori. Well, first of all, for our viewers, the job doesn't pay $70 million. This person, he or she, when they are selected, they will advise the mayor who has devoted $70 million to reduce crime and have a public safety plan going forward. I do believe that I agree with Bobby and Phil that the crime problem in the city of Atlanta is out of control, but I do have the faith in this mayor and this chief of police that along with this new position, they're going to do everything they can to tackle this problem. I think that the citizens of Atlanta, while it is the primary job of the chief of police, and I think Chief Bryan understands that, the more help, the more recommendations that the mayor got from her committee, this is a part of making sure that we have this money that she's devoted to actually have systemic long-term solutions to the crime problems. And it is gangs. I'll agree with Phil. I think we do have a gang problem in the city of Atlanta. I think we have an organized crime problem in the city of Atlanta. I also think, COVID-19 is a result of some of these crimes that we're seeing as well. So ultimately, while you guys may not agree with the position, I do think the mayor is going to make sure she surrounds herself with public safety experts to make sure that they have a long, comprehensive plan to deal with this crime problem.
Phil, we'll move on, but you've been shaking your head the whole time.
Well, I'm surprised. I think I agree with Theron on some points also, but it's a needless layer of bureaucracy, Lori. I think that's the bottom line. The police need to have better morale, and we need to have a new chief. I think we need to wait until January. We've got a mayoral election going on. I think all of the candidates except one are talking about battling gangs and crime now, and they all are going to be a lot better than Keisha Lance Bottoms. And so put this on the table. We don't need it.
All right, Theron, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, a few seconds. So I want to get this right. So, Phil, you come on the show, you criticize the mayor when you say she's not doing anything about crime. You criticize her when you say that she's not coming up with a plan. Now she's doing that. She's hiring people, a person who would be in her office, directly reporting to her, working with her chief of staff and her chief operating officer. And so we can't wait until January. I know a lot of people think that whoever the next mayor is going to be, he or she is just going to come in and wave a magic wand on their own and fix the crime problem. You do need to have things happening now, so when that next mayor comes in, he or she, you'll make sure that she actually has, or that this person has a plan in place to go tackle this issue.
Martha, go ahead.
How about work with your police chief? Work with your police chief.
She's doing that, Phil. She's doing that.
Well,
I
think that Marin is probably the last person in Atlanta that's got faith in Mayor Bottoms, and I think that's commendable. But I agree with you, Lori. Let's put the money into the Atlanta Police Department and let the police chief do what he knows works.
All right, Theron, I'll give you 10 seconds here.
Yeah, I just think we can't confuse our viewers. Listen. This job, we don't know what it's going to pay because the salary range hasn't been devoted. So let's just hypothetically say it costs $75,000 to $100,000. I think we all agree that if you have someone who's waking up every morning, going to sleep every night, working with the chief of police, working with the administration, working with all the public safety agencies to make sure that the $70 million that the mayor has allocated, she was one of the first people to come out to use that money in the encouragement of the Biden administration, is going to make sure that it's placed in the right place. It's going to help these officers and help the communities. And so I don't want our viewers to be confused that that this person is going to be getting all that money in their pockets. What it is that it's going to help direct that money to the city.
We'll wait and see, because I know we'll be discussing it. We are way over time. Coming up, winners and losers. Everyone stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Bobby, we'll start with you.
Okay, let's start with the winners here. And I want to just say that it's the frontline workers. It's the nurses, it's the doctors who are taking care of patients who are overwhelming their emergency rooms. It's the janitorial staff who's coming in and sanitize everything so that people, mostly unvaccinated folks, can try and do their best to battle this disease. And secondly, to teachers who are thankfully allowing our children to be back in the classrooms, enabling them to get the education they deserve in person in most cases. Loser for the week is Kelly Loeffler. Herschel Walker's in the race. That means Kelly Loeffler's chance of going back to the U.S. Senate, 0.
All right, Phil, over to you. We don't have a lot of time this week.
Okay, the loser's got to be President Joe Biden and his puppets here in Georgia, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. You know, for days after this botched evacuation in Afghanistan that put our men in peril, that put our Afghan allies in peril, there's a slaughter going on. It's got to be, they all have got to be losers. This is sad.
Darren, over to you. We got about a minute 20 left in the show.
Thank you. I want to make my winner Mickey Stevens, who unfortunately passed, state representative down in Savannah, Georgia, the 165th district, was just a statesman. He passed, and his funeral was this week, so I definitely want to offer my condolences to his family. And then lastly, I want to give a big shout out to Helen Davenport, who is the mother of State Senator Gail Davenport. Lori, she watches the show every Sunday. She's a young age of 95, retired school teacher, so definitely want to say a shout out to her.
A big hello to her, and thanks for watching. Martha.
Yeah, I want to just remember those families that are going to get a knock at the door over the next day or two to find out that their loved one was killed in Afghanistan. And I want to remember those families, as we always do. But I'm going to agree with Bobby and give a shout out to all the people in schools. I'm the 9th district member of the state school board, and I want to remember all those folks that are out there working very hard and doing jobs that they weren't necessarily hired to do.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. My winner this week, Caleb Anderson, the 13-year-old student. He's the youngest student on Georgia Tech's campus right now. And guess what? He's majoring in aerospace engineering. Hope he has a great year. Thanks, everyone. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week.